Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Jennie Lee, and she's here today to share with us her new book, Spark Change: 108 Provocative Questions for Spiritual Evolution. Now just imagine that you could ask one question which would change your whole perspective. Celebrity yoga and meditation expert Jennie Lee is here to share with us how to do just that. Jennie is the award-winning author of True Yoga, Practicing with Yoga Sutras for Happiness and Spiritual Fulfillment, and Breathing Love, Meditation and Action. Jennie is a noted expert in the field of yoga therapy and spiritual living. As a certified yoga therapist, she has taught classical yoga and meditation for more than 20 years. And she's coached private clients in the practice that integrate life spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Her writings are featured regularly in national magazines such as Light of Consciousness and Yoga Therapy Today, Yoga Digest, mindbodygreen, and many more. So let's welcome to the show, Jennie Lee.
Thank you, Marianne. So happy to be with you again.
Oh my gosh, I love any time we get to spend together and we get to talk about your new book. I'm so excited about this. What a fabulous book this is.
Thank you. And it's so timely, even though it's been, many years in the making. It actually hit a very apropos time, right? With the title Spark Change.
Without a doubt. So why don't you share with us, what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, so I have worked with private clients for many, many years as a yoga therapist. And so much of that work is taking people through times of transition in their lives. Often people come if they're having a career change or a health crisis or a relationship loss maybe. And the process that I take people through is really dependent upon me asking good questions to draw from them that deeper information about what might be going on behind the presenting issue. So the idea for the book really came from that private practice that I've been in for over 20 years now, and wanting to provide my readers kind of a way to take themselves through that same sort of thing. This is a book of questions, and it's a deep dive into the process of self-reflection and self-inquiry. So with the intention of moving us, any reader or individual, towards a greater understanding, not just of their human personality self, but really of that spiritual soul self, which lives within. So the subtitle, 108 Provocative Questions for Spiritual Evolution, really speaks to that deeper purpose that I had in helping people to understand that they are human beings having that spiritual experience. We've heard that phrase, and it really is true, but people don't always know quite how to tap into that.
Well, I love this book for many reasons. I mean, you kind of just dive right into it. Chapter 1, how many times does something have to happen before it occurs to me to change? I mean, how many of us have that question?
Right. Well, I think humans are sort of change averse. We don't always embrace it with open arms, and we knock our heads against the wall again and again, frustrated by something. And so that question is said with a little bit of humor, because I know for myself, it's kind of like I have to get that huge wake-up call from the universe. And it's like, oh, I need to change something. I need to change within myself how I'm standing in relationship to this issue on my plate. So that was a fun one to kind of start out with. And I think it's something that we all need to look at. Like if we're frustrated with something in our lives or feeling like something needs a shift, it's probably us that needs the shift, not the outer circumstance.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, and I look even back in my own life, it's like, man, I went through that mistake a few times. I could have learned that one a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Well, and as you were working with people, were you discovering like themes and that's kind of what started the whole process for the book?
Yeah, as I was thinking about the organization of it, it's interesting. When I start with an idea, I'll just kind of brain dump for many months with different bits of information, and then as I get deeper into it, and I start to feel like I've got a body of information that I'm working with, it begins to kind of coalesce itself, if you will. Um, and then I realized that the themes that I was working with, and so the 12 chapters, I think, I'm not sure if we called them themes or if we called them chapters in the end, but to me, they're themes. So it's interesting that you use that word, because they're sort of categories through which we have to go as we're in the process of change. So the arc of the book through these 12 themes is really what I have seen people go through in terms of first identifying that aspect that needs changing, and then clarifying what our beliefs are, our values, and then looking at how willing we are to do the work of change, and moving ourselves through this kind of very methodical process. So that's kind of how those themes coalesced into the chapters.
Why don't you share with us a couple that really stand out for you? And if there's a story that relates to them as well.
Sure. You know, I love them all equally. And I guess if I
I
just
guess I
had to,
put you on the hot seat, right?
yeah, you did. That's the non-prepared interviews, right? I have to be ready to go with whatever. I guess I'll just take the chapter on willingness, because this is something that I feel strongly about, that we need to look at. Is change for anyone is not always seamless or easy. And I think there's a lot of people that just kind of want that easy button. And it's sort of a hard reality to face, that there are some sacrifices, there is some work involved with making positive personal change. Um, so this chapter explores willingness. And I know you asked about a personal instance, and I am actually kind of drawing a blank from like a personal story, but it's more of a universal thing that I've worked through in my life, where times when I've run up against resistance towards something, and I can kind of feel my heels digging in. I don't want to change this. I want somebody else to change, And I've had to really look at that. What is that resistance kind of telling me? What is the deeper need beneath the resistance? What kind of having to work around the side of something for a while, and then around the other side, and um, determining how willing I am to really stare it in the face and look not just at the issue, but at myself, and how um, my ego might be involved. And, I'm wanting to place blame, or I'm wanting to push the work off on somebody else, and so it is that sense of being willing to really dig in at an authentic level with ourselves. And so much of this book is that process of self-reflection and looking inward and doing it kindly. I mean, we're not here to place judgment or be self-critical, but it's more like an honest look in the mirror. And it's like, okay, yep, I do need to work on that. Okay, how can I do that? So that's where I'll stop with that question.
Well, and as I was going through your book, there were several, chapters and areas that really had me asking questions. And one of the ones you talk about is, what question am I afraid to ask? And I think this book is inviting us to go into places maybe we're afraid to go, maybe places where we feel like we need permission to go, places that we don't really want to uncover, because only in doing that are we able to kind of move ahead. If we are not asking these questions, then spiritually, we're going to stay stagnant.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I love hearing the questions that people key into. It's one of the funnest things about having this book in people's hands now, and hearing the questions that jump off the page to them. So very fun. You're the first person I've talked to who has keyed into that question, and I love that one because it's almost like a Zen koan, right? Like, what is the question I'm afraid to ask? Well, if we don't know, maybe we don't even know what that question is. But that's what this inquiry is pointing towards, right? Is just taking time to listen inwardly and think, well, what am I avoiding? And maybe what have I been questioning, but not really ready to think about yet. So by just asking that question, what question am I afraid to ask, is that first step to opening the door to those scary places. And there's a bit in the book about courage, and courage is so much a part of this too, right? Just being, again, willing and courageous to approach those shadow spots in our psyches and in our spiritual development. And the ego is certainly dodgy. It loves to hide that part that wants to self-protect and be okay and outwardly and not show its vulnerability. It can be really dodgy in hiding not only from others but from us. And so it is a courageous process to start asking those questions that we've been afraid of.
So you start chapter 2 with values. Why did you feel a section on values was so important for this book?
I think many people haven't spent time specifically identifying their values. And so they meander through life. And often I speak with people who feel a bit lost or undirected or without purpose. And to go back and to start with values, and that's why it's at the beginning of the book, chapter 2, is I feel really fundamental to finding clear direction and clear purpose in life. And there's a section on purpose towards the end of the book. And again, it's sort of a process that we have to go through, but identifying our values is one of the most important things that we can do to know not only what needs changing, but how to change it. Because if we're living out of alignment with our core values, and this happens subtly, it kind of creeps up on us sometimes. We might think we know our values, but then we're making choices as we go along and we're adapting to life as it's happening. And then suddenly 10 years down the road, we look at our life and we go, wow, this really isn't, where I want it to be. So I think going back to those fundamental core values is important. And maybe they change for some people over time, and it's a reevaluation process.
Well, now's the time to reevaluate everything, So, when we look at the times that we have, some people are choosing to, still maybe stay indoors. So, we're obviously still doing social distancing and what have you. And so it's important then to do that inward dive, because there's only so much we could do outwards.
Yes, it is a beautiful time for this book to be getting into people's hands, because as people are at home more and considering the changes that need some reevaluation, both personally and collectively, I'm hopeful that the questions and the descriptions to the questions, the guidance with each one will provide that inspiration to people to spend a little time really considering how we move forward from here. And so it is definitely a time of reevaluation on many levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have another question. It says, what do I prioritize on a daily basis? And I think this is just so important right now. It's our choices clearly illustrate our priorities, which are a direct reflection of our values. And when we look at that, it's like, what are we really putting as far as values in our life? And it has people questioning what my values are then.
Yeah. So, it's easy. And I've certainly fallen into it at times during this shutdown period, of just kind of wasting time, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with watching a television show or having a relaxing evening with your family. Of course, that's so important. But sometimes maybe that one television show becomes six and you're on a binge, and you've just wasted an entire day. And then the question is that choice to waste an entire day really in alignment with my highest values? So it's kind of that look at, well, are my outer actions matching what I truly believe? And being honest with ourselves if the choices that we're making are in fact reflective of what we really want to manifest.
Well, and a lot of times people like to think of themselves as highly spiritually evolved individuals. So are you walking the walk, And your book really has some questions for us to kind of look at a day, on a daily basis. One of them talks about at the core, what do I stand for? I make choices based on love, not fear, because I am courageous. So when we look at this, it's really giving people pointers on how to move forward in life. And to do that, if we're going to be this being of light, how to go ahead and do that walk.
Right. And it's really giving people time to think about from the smallest choices to the largest ones, right? So from the little quotidian daily actions and ways that we interact with the people that we are in contact with, whether it's people in our home space or people at the grocery store, to all the way to the choices that we make in political elections or in environmental actions. These, we have to make sure that we have alignment all the way up and down the scale of our life, from the smallest to the largest choices.
So what do you want to see people take away from this book?
Well, I'm very hopeful that this is the kind of book that people will keep on their coffee table or bedside table and dip into time and again. It's not a book that needs to be read cover to cover. It certainly could be if someone is really wanting to do that deep dive into self-exploration, because it is laid out methodically. But it's also the kind of book that you could just randomly open to a page and pick a question for the day to reflect upon or write about in your journal or talk about with your family or your spouse. So I'm really hoping that people take away the, bits of inspiration over time, and that this is something that like a companion that can go with them into this next year, which is going to be so pivotal, in so many ways for all of us, in terms of changes that are happening. And I really would love to see us all be as conscious and intentional as possible with that. And I hope this book can be a companion guide for people.
So that's part of the bigger discussion, is to have this for people who are looking for that conscious walk.
Yes, absolutely. We don't pick up a book that has the subtitle of around spiritual evolution unless we have some interest in kind of that higher path. And we don't necessarily even need to know what that is or what that looks like, but just recognizing that there is something bigger going on that we're all a part of, and a higher energy and a higher order that we're all involved with. So how can we participate with that consciously?
So, when you were pulling together all of these questions, were there some that you developed just through intuition, or were they really all sparked from your clients?
Many were maybe came from client work, but I did not keep a log of questions during the past 20 years of client work. So they're all these questions came through intuition and my inner processing of how I wanted to speak to each one of the themes. And after you've done work, a certain type of work for so long, it's just in your being. So yeah, it wasn't like they were written down over time. It was just during the time of writing the book. And so much of it was intuitive. And maybe I didn't ask the question in the particular phrasing that it's in the book to a client at some time in the past, but generally all of these things have been explored with people over time.
Yeah, you can really see the value of having a book like this to really kind of jumpstart those questions that would move you forward. I think a lot of times people don't even know what to ask. And it's only having good questions does that development take place.
That's so true that people don't really know what to ask. And that's the value of a therapist or a counselor, right? And so people will often say to me, I'll ask they'll tell their story, and then I'll think about it for a moment, and then I'll ask a question, and the question might not be exactly related to the story that they just shared, but I've heard something within it that makes me want to get more information around a side issue, and they'll suddenly a light bulb will go off and they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I've never thought of that. And so this book is my attempt to kind of bring some of that to people in their homes and in their yoga studios or wherever they are that they're doing their practice, meditation cushions, and that they have these questions in their hands. And even if they can't get to a therapy session or don't want to do that, that they can take themselves through a process of inquiry that is quite deep. And I think will definitely spark some further questions within their own minds.
Well, isn't that part of the point, right?
Yeah.
Is to give them really a jumping board, because you can only grow based on the quality of your questions. And if you don't even know where to start, I mean, my goodness, I mean, this book is the perfect place to start because it gives people an understanding on all fronts. And when you talk about your book, you talk about awareness, cultivating a deep sense of awareness. What are some questions you would feel like that would be beneficial for people to really ask themselves to really develop that?
Tough question, Marianne. Good one.
I put you on the hot seat. Sorry.
I love it when, the question woman gets stumped by a question, right?
Oh, I don't believe it for a minute. I know you got something good. Well, and it's interesting. It doesn't even have to be in regards to that because you've got so much in here. Awareness is really based on where people are in their spiritual path. How a question's asked, it will move you forward. So what really stands out for you? I think that's probably the better question.
It is. And I mean, I guess this is a bridge between the two questions. One of the questions in the book that I think does speak to this kind of point of awareness that we might be at any given time. And this is one that I think everyone can understand. And it's certainly one that I have sat with a lot, but it's how can I be the best version of myself today? How can I be the best version of myself today? Because, we can have ideals and we can believe that, as you said, we are these spiritually focused beings, but then we come up short sometimes because maybe we didn't sleep well, or we're just short-tempered about something, or we've let our emotions get involved and we're reactive. And so that is a checkpoint that I often go back to. How can I be the best version of myself today? So again, it's sort of reaching back into what we talked about earlier, reaching back into our values, reaching back into the willingness to do the inner work day after day after day, to have a good, strong look at our inner life and our outer life, and do those two things match? Am I walking in the world according to my highest beliefs and my highest ideals? And if I'm not, what do I need to shift? And how can I take a step back and just reevaluate? So that's I think one that would definitely speak to becoming more aware of ourselves.
I love it. Thank you. Nothing like putting you on the hot seat there,
Yeah. I got it. Okay, good.
Well, and because I mean, in your book, you talk so much about like moving beyond limitations. And I felt like, gosh, that must have been a theme. And I could see where that would be a theme for a lot of people, is like, how do we move beyond our limitations?
Yeah. And, I know I've certainly been feeling very much that kind of constriction of the outer limitations of which I have no control. And the sense of powerlessness has been coming up a lot for me lately. And so I've been looking at, well, okay, true. I can't change the circumstances of the restrictions that are being placed on us outwardly. Um, but how do I shift this feeling of limitation within my own being, the feeling of being powerless? And one of the things that I've really been working on is just resetting myself in terms of what I do have power over and how I can move through that sense of inner limitation. Because we do have so much available to us in our inner world. I've been listening to a couple of beautiful audio stories about people in prison who utilize that time. I mean, Nelson Mandela is one of the most significant and obvious examples of someone who utilized the time of being imprisoned to where it was so much limitation, right? To really reevaluate his inner life and his being. So I feel that when we run up against limitation, either outwardly or inwardly, it is a call to reevaluation of what we can control and how we are responding, and then looking to the places where we can really step into greater inner power.
Your book is all about greater inner power because you're really giving people a proactive approach to really developing their consciousness.
Thank you. Yes, that's my hope.
Well, Jennie, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your book, Spark Change, and be part of your community?
Sure. Well, Spark Change, 108 Provocative Questions for Spiritual Evolution is available through all major booksellers. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, the publisher is Sounds True. Independent bookstores have it available as well. So wherever you're comfortable buying your books, I hope you will. And my website where people can connect with me is Jennie, my name, Jennie, Jennie, Lee, yogatherapy.com, Jennie Lee, yogatherapy.com. And if you hop on there, there's a page about the book, Spark Change. You can get a free excerpt. And there are also some bonus guides that are available if you have specific interest in book clubs or you're a yoga teacher. So lots of fun freebies if you hop on my site.
Well, Jennie, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne. It's always a delight to talk to you. And thank you for your good questions.
Well, thank you, Jennie. My goodness, it's all about asking great questions, and Spark Change is the way to start. Again, if you'd like to connect with Jennie and learn more about her book, you can at jennieleeyogatherapy.com for more information. Spark Change is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers, and if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.